Hello and welcome to Global Sanctuary for Elephants podcast, Global Rumblings. Global Sanctuary for Elephants, or GSE for short, is a non-profit organization with a mission to create vast safe spaces for captive elephants where they are able to heal physically and emotionally, often from very traumatic pasts. I'm your host, Nadia Mari, and I'll be taking you to the lush jungle of the Mato Grosso region in central Brazil, home of GSE's initial project, Elephant Sanctuary Brazil. Currently home to 5 female Asian elephants, lovingly referred to as the girls. Hi everyone, welcome back to Global Rumblings, and thank you for joining us again this week for a new episode. Let's head straight over to Brazil to say hi to Kat and Scott and to find out if the sanctuary has power again. Hi you two.
Hey Nadia.
Hey Nadia, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you? Hot shower, washing machine, all the mod cons, all working again?
I hesitate to answer that.
Yes.
Oh, good.
We don't want to tempt fate. But it's green and lovely. I know we're not supposed to talk about the weather, but it is stunning and perfect and wet and muddy and lush green. It's perfect. So if that comes with the occasional power outage, we'll take it.
Oh, and I can hear the birds in the background, which is very cute. So
always lovely.
Always lovely. Okay, so I'd like to talk about 2 things in today's podcast. One about Pocha and Guille, of course, mother and daughter, rescued from Argentina and relocated to Elephant Sanctuary Brazil in 2022. And we left off last week with you talking about, or you both talking about, the dominant behavior that Guille had over her mother. And Scott, you sort of suggested or thought that one possibility for that behavior was that it was the only thing that Guille could control in her life, the only thing that she had in the concrete pit, but also it was the only thing that Pocha could offer her daughter. So a very disturbed relationship. If you could expand on that, and then somehow if we can then segue and talk about Pocha's health. Yeah, those are the 2 topics I'd like to cover. Maybe start with number 1, this dominant behavior, very unnatural, as Kat explained to us.
I think the first thing to go back to on that is that captive elephant behavior is very dysfunctional. You know, these elephants are not raised in a proper social structure. The social etiquette, the social rules, those are learned through a long, extended child rearing. And when you have elephants that have been pulled out of captivity, out of the wild at 2 and 3 years old and sent to a solitary environment or to live with 1 or 2 others, they don't have that guidance of what is a proper social etiquette, what is proper social behavior. And to kind of punctuate that, many years ago, I don't remember when, I was at a conference and, yes?
Many years ago, back in the day when I was 10 years old in the 40s.
Yeah, it seems like it was an eternity ago, 5 or 6 decades ago.
Not that long ago.
I don't know. It's been forever. Way back at the beginning of the sanctuary in Tennessee. I was at a conference, and I remember somebody talking about behavior. And it was Joyce Poole actually gave a presentation, and she was talking about wild elephant behavior compared to captive.
And this was at the Elephant Manners
Association. And she was not able to be there at the time. She did it as a recording, and then she was available for question and answer. And in there, she talked about behavior and the aggressive behavior you see in captivity that isn't seen in the wild. From calves to calves, from mothers to calves, from calves to mothers, and she said it just isn't seen, and that raises questions for her about what happens in captivity, what happens that social structure in captivity. And I remember immediately after she got off the phone, several people in the group of, she doesn't know what she's talking about. We see aggression all the time. Yes, exactly, reinforcing the point she made. What's happening in captivity, and we have a lot of dysfunctional behavior in captivity. Even zoos that will say we have our matriarch, or they explain their matriarch, and their matriarch is the one that pushes everybody around. That's not a leader, that's a bully. And but they see this very atypical, very dysfunctional behavior in many social environments, many captive environments, because social etiquette isn't learned the way it's supposed to be learned from generational development. Yeah, so this is not unique to Pocha and Guille. It is unique to captivity. But what was unique for us is strength with which, the force with which Guille was aggressive to her mom.
I'm listening to you.
I thought I was going to feel something in there. Nope. So that was really unique to see. And then again, what was the origin of it? We can't say. The only thing we can allude to it and make suggestions of is there is nothing else that Captive Base had to offer. They didn't have browse, they didn't have toys, they didn't have anything, they didn't have training, they didn't
even have the outside world to watch.
No.
I mean, there was as close to zero stimulation as you can get without just living in a dark box. And we've talked about it before, for everything they didn't have and how sterile that environment was. I mean, Guille came out remarkably well. She was born into that. There was a significant opportunity for her to have some incredibly neurotic behaviors. And yes, she did stereotype as far as her big circles that we talked about, but she didn't even do the typical stereotyping. I mean, we've known elephants in captivity that have self-mutilated. I mean, there are so many things that could have happened to her behaviorally that didn't. And if part of the reasoning behind that was that she was able to take out her frustrations, her boredom, her aggression, negativity, all the emotions that, as a child to an adolescent to a teen go through, if she was able to vent those on her mom, I mean, I don't know.
But her mom would give you a look, because I got this, I can handle it.
No, I know.
I can sustain it.
I'm
But then she also gave you looks like, oh, that one really hurt,
Yeah, I'm definitely not approving of the fact that she was harsh to her mother, but I don't know if that was part of the only reason that she came out okay. And I'm not sure if Pocha knew that it was the only thing, like you said, the only thing she could give her, I mean, I certainly don't want to call it a gift, but...
No, but again, it was a definitely dysfunctional relationship with that, only because, Pocha actually reinforced that behavior with her socialization afterwards.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even when they initially were here and Guille would do something, it's not like Pocha would even leave. It's different in Mendoza. She didn't really have much of a space to walk away in, but, she could have left. I mean, she could have walked far away if she wanted to. And a lot of times she wouldn't even step away from her. Guillemina would kick her and she'd just stand there. I was like, okay. And I mean, she definitely, if she wanted to, again, not supporting elephant on elephant aggression, she could have hit her back. I mean, she could have done something in retaliation, but she never did. She just let her do whatever she needed in that moment and kind of just absorbed it all.
That actually goes back to that Elephant Managers Association conference as well, because one of the specific points Joyce made was that you never see aggression from a mom to offspring. They don't reprimand with physical reprimand, but they actually see that in captivity all the time in a lot of zoo and sterile environments. Is you see aggression from mom to calf, which is, again, she said, undocumented in the wild. It's just guidance. It's just through social guidance, not through physical reprimand.
I think, unfortunately, with the elephants in captivity, aggression is just an accepted part of managing elephants when it shouldn't be. There is no, in most situations, there's no trying to figure out why the elephant is being aggressive. It's just this, oh yeah, she's aggressive, let's medicate her. Oh yeah, she's aggressive, let's separate them. Oh yeah, she's aggressive, and whatever excuse you want to use, whatever way you want to deal with it. But it's almost never, trying to figure out the why behind it and to see if something can actually be done to solve that versus just doing something to adjust the behavior.
I had to think about what you said in our last recording. You said that in the wild, a mother doesn't raise her calf on her own. There's the whole herd. So there are aunts and there are sisters and other mothers. So Pocha being on her own, even if there were some instincts there, becoming a mother in such a sterile environment, having no one there for her, I don't know, it maybe just was normal as well. or she didn't have another way to deal with it. But you did say that given the autonomy and the space that your sanctuary offers, it did actually settle down or go away quite quickly. And also when they observed, as you mentioned, Kat, the other elephant, saying there's no one else here kicking or hitting if you can't get what they want. So that behavior did luckily go away.
Yeah, I think a lot of that had to do with more stimulation as well.
Yeah.
So many more things to think about and do. And initially, a lot of that, what we saw here, was because of her insecurities. Mm-hmm. Not ready for mom to go outside, or she wasn't ready to go outside and wanted to make sure her mom stayed with her. And she would do a lot of controlling behavior with that. But as those insecurities subsided and she gained more comfort and with more stimulation, all of that.
And she bumped into 2 more dominant elephants than her. Maya and Bambi were great for her. Not that the other 2 weren't, but the other 2 are quieter. They're definitely more grandma. I mean, Bambi's a little different now because of her vision loss, but she is still definitely in the hierarchy above Guillemina for sure. But with Maya, having somebody else to play with and vent some of that energy. I mean, she is in her 20s. She has a lot more energy than a typical 60-year-old elephant, and she's never been able to run around. She's never been able to play, and, she's never had that space. So not only having the space and the stimulation, but Maya was happy to roughhouse with her because nobody here roughhouses with her either. She's a tank, she's a very big energy tankus elephant. And I think having that, and then also having Bambi, who wouldn't roughhouse the same way, but was very auntie with her, would let her get silly, but had boundaries. And I think both of them helped her realize what socialization, what her dynamics, what that's actually supposed to be like. That you can, be silly and not be aggressive, that you can find other ways to vent those emotions. And
I think Bambi was more strict.
Yeah.
But she's still more intimidated by Maya.
Well, that's because Maya's line is like much further away, but when you hit Maya's line, it is a very firm line.
That's a very firm line, and Maya's not afraid to let her know that was the line, my dear. But to this day, she will definitely egg on Bambi more and antagonize Bambi a lot more. Even though Bambi is quicker to push her back. Not in an incredibly forceful way. I mean,
no.
And Bambi,
and that's why it's kind of fun for her. It's that like little kid thing of sticking your finger in somebody's face and being like, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. That's like Guillemina's personality sometimes towards Bambi. And Bambi's like, listen, kid.
Bambi has much lower tolerance, but it's much more strict. But it's cute. It's entertaining to see that the dynamics between all of them, because none of those relationships are equal or quite charming.
And I picked up on your newsletter, but also on your social media post, it was actually GGs birthday on the 19th of November. So you turned 26. So again, a reminder, first 23 years of her life in a concrete pit with no stimulation, and then only 3 years now, then 2 years at the sanctuary. So happy birthday. Belated happy birthday to Guille.
She's a Scorpio. That explains everything.
We actually have a handful of them here, including us. So.
I was going to say, both of us are. We're not being insulting.
So maybe leaving belated birthday girl Guille aside, talk more about Pocha. I was reading up on some of your posts, and you said that it was very wonderful to see at the sanctuary Pocha step aside to let Guillemina discover the sanctuary and to make friends. And I'd like to go back to what we talked about in our first episode on Pocha and Guillemina, when they were both still in Mendoza, that you were in daily contact with the caregivers, looking at videos, looking at photos, and that you mentioned several times to them that something seemed off with Pocha. You have decades of experience in captive elephant welfare. You've looked at innumerable videos, photos, looked at elephants, but there was something off. You didn't know what it was. The caregiver said, no, Pocha's fine. She's like she always is. So when she actually arrived at the sanctuary and you were able to see her physically in person, did this feeling that you had that something wasn't quite right with her, did that manifest itself stronger?
One of the parts of that is she didn't always look like she didn't feel well. Like we would get, like you said, photos and videos on a regular basis, and she would look fine. I mean, or at least how you would expect a bored elephant who lives in a pit to look like. But every once in a while, there would be a photo or video where you just look at her face and you're like, she looks like she doesn't feel well. And it wasn't received actually very well at all. This was a trainer that we were paying to work in Mendoza to get them trained for the sanitary requirements because nobody there was able to train them for this. So we were paying for keepers to be there. And the one time we did actually voice concern, it was not received well. And we let it go because we don't see her every day. But there is that, I don't know if it's just from being around elephants so much or from actually actively practicing just really trying to see them, you know, not just look at them, not see the cute elephant, any of that, like really look at them. That sometimes you pick up on things that other people didn't see, but we let it go because we were scolded. And
I mean, to put that in perspective a little bit, it was bruised ego.
Sure.
You know, it was perceived as, you know, you guys aren't here. How can you tell me that I'm not seeing something in front of my face? Well, sometimes that happens. You know, we all have that where you see an outside perspective is actually the best perspective sometimes because when you're seeing it every day, you don't pick up on the same subtle changes sometimes. And, you know, we have a horse vet from Cuiabá, the nearby city, and she comes out every 2 weeks. And we do that intentionally because she doesn't get to see him all the time. And she sees things differently than we do. She sees the progression or digression of physical condition differently, and she sees it in wounds. And by having it every 2 weeks, she's still here frequently enough that it's not, you know, a huge catch up on what's going on. But it's enough time away just to have a fresh set of eyes coming in.
For those who don't know, we do have a vet who's a caregiver who is here every day. So we're not just having a vet come in every 2 weeks.
No, and Trish
Yeah.
is in constant contact, and she's getting videos and photos all the time. You know, but just that fresh set of eyes
she's here for months at a time.
does make a difference.
I think the biggest thing with Pocha when she got here was knowing that something was off and not knowing what it was, but it was more not from her physical presentation, it was more from her behavior. And we didn't have long enough, we didn't know her enough. We just were trying to figure out what it could possibly be and talk about the different options. Because yes, she did step back and let Gigi make friends, which we could see being just a mom thing, you know, wanting to make sure that she's being social and blah, blah, blah. Although, you know, elephants like Hana were definitely more interested in Pocha than she was in Gigi, but Pocha would still step back. But we were seeing weird things like everybody would be vocalizing and being really excited, and Pocha would actually like physically run over. And you could tell she was excited, and you could tell she wanted to join in and that she was going to be vocal. And at the last minute, she would stop herself and she would walk away instead. And we're like, what is holding you back? It's like, what is this wall that you were putting up? Because she's sweet as pie. You know, we have very receptive elephants who are very physically gentle. I mean, a million more times gentle than her own daughter. You know, so we're like, what is it? What are you just prioritizing your daughter first? What is going on?
And a lot of it seemed that way. Because sometimes she would go with her daughter to in the middle of excitement, and then she would step back, you know, and let her daughter carry that forward. It was really interesting. But there was a time also, I think there was in the first 3 weeks. Remember, you know, it wasn't that long. I don't remember how long it was. Her energy level was very, very low. You know, her coloration wasn't great. And we went ahead and gave her a couple of vitamin shots. And she perked right back up. And she
had been eating, she had been acting fine, except for the low energy. And it was one of those, maybe it's just all been a lot. You know, it definitely happens, you know, and knowing where she came from, her inappropriate diet, the hay that was wrong, too much produce, their dung was terrible, so on and so forth. You're not surprised when these elephants show up and they're not physically 100%. None of them have ever been that have come here. So didn't really think much of it because that improves pretty quickly. But again, it is one of those, it's hard to figure out sometimes without being able to do the level of testing that you can do on a cat or a dog or a person. You're not left with a lot, unfortunately.
It's tricky with them, and that's part of why we spend so much time trying to understand the nuances of each individual. And I was just talking to some new caregivers this week and said, the most important thing you can learn is what is normal for each individual. What is that typical behavior of theirs? And that allows you to see when something changes. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know what normal is, any changes are going to be unrecognized. So really study your elephants, really analyze. And that can start the first day that you're here, the first day you're observing, the first day you watch what we're doing with them, watch what happens during treatment, watch their posture, watch all these different things, and just get to know what is normal, what is typical. Because our first line of defense is any little misstep aside from normal, any little migration from that is our first clue that something might come up, because we don't have the tools. We don't have the diagnostic tools to know.
And that's not our own personal limitations. It's just you can't because of their size. All of that equipment does not work on elephants.
I remember being back in the sanctuary in Tennessee. There was a time that I wasn't with one group of elephants for a while, and I was watching as they were feeding, and I asked one of the caregivers, is this normal? And she said, we never watch them eat. We don't know if it's normal. It's like, wait a minute, we have to know normal. That's our foundation, for determining what's going on with them. And even more so because you're dealing with a wild animal who is basically inherent to hide what ails them, to mask what ails them. They keep that within. They don't want to be.
That's what keeps them alive in the wild.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one, you want the elephant to be able to share and be open with you, but two, you want to be able to see what the nuances are. And then when you do see something different and you do adapt or you do change or you give them a homeopathic remedy and they start recognizing that you're seeing that little difference, then they actually start to share more.
Yeah, but it's always a thing in the beginning because you don't have a normal. You don't know these elephants, and what was normal where they were is almost never normal once they get to sanctuary. So it's where you have to start your base and figure out what's normal, and it's hard to know what was normal for her because we didn't have.
You didn't have it.
No.
There's a party going on in the background.
It's
little birds.
It's a juvenile. One of our juvenile blackbirds is begging and trying to get any bird that comes within 6 inches of it to feed it, no matter what species it is, no matter what gender it is. He doesn't care. He just wants somebody to feed him.
So when we talk about normal behavior, because it does add a little bit of a side note on this, with Pocha, who was sweet, sweet, sweet Grandma Pocha. Yeah. She was so wonderful, so sweet, so gentle. So Mateus was...
You're going to throw Mateus under the bus.
No, I'm throwing Pocha under the bus.
All right.
So we had told Mateus, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're seeing. This is what we've been doing. Everything's good. And I said, you can go ahead and feed her. I'm going to go to the others and see what's going on.
And Mateus has worked here for years. He works with all of the elephants. He is our veterinary caregiver, but he's very good with everybody. It's not like he's new.
And again, we're protected contact. We're outside of the fence, all these different things. So he goes over and feeds them. And he calls me a little while later. He's like, I'm going to need some help here. I said, okay, what's going on? It's like, Pocha's throwing her food at me. It's like, what do you mean? No, she's like picking up her apple and throwing her apple and picking her carrot and throwing it. I was like, she's not eating anything. He's like, no, she's just throwing everything at me one at a time. Like, Pocha, what the hell is this, Pocha?
And we had been working with her. We go down to do night feed and we do little bits of training and, of course, just general care. And she's been a peach. I mean, she is so soft, so sweet, so lovely. And we're like, what? And
Mateus is so sweet and lovely
and
gentle
and
kind.
He's a very
such
soft man.
So, like, what is this, Pocha? So, just as Guille took her frustrations out on Pocha was taking her frustrations out on the world, out on Mateus. And it took a little while, actually. It took a little while for her to start saying, "Okay, I'm not gonna use you as my punching bag anymore," but not as a literal punching bag, but to get that frustration out, she was throwing. It's like, I'm thinking throwing a little bit, like, no, like trunk over her head, throwing things down on top of him. Like, holy cow. It's like, I can't even get back to the floor where she's throwing so much stuff at me. Like, okay, Pocha.
And of course, it's not like funny, but he was laughing. I mean, it's one of those, she's such a good girl. Okay.
Until she's not.
No, and then we go and feed her, and she's like perfect princess again. It's like, what are you doing? You have to be nice to Mateus. He's your veterinarian. So maybe it's just that. It's a veterinarian blood.
Yeah.
That reminds me of what you said, that just because they come to sanctuary, not the listeners think, but she's at sanctuary, so why was she unhappy and frustrated? I mean, just because she comes to sanctuary doesn't mean that the last, whatever, how many years, decades she was at the zoo, they're then just forgot. She's still got, she still has frustrations and things that she has to work through from that time. So, yes, unfortunately, poor Mateus. Yes, I did have the privilege of meeting him, and as you say, a very soft and gentle man. So he took the brunt of that.
He did. And, people always say, well, they'll know that you have good intentions. And yes, that's all well and good. And they do know, they know you better than you know yourself half the time before you even walk up to them. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be open and loving to you. Like you just said, it dismisses what they went through for the 5 decades before that.
Yeah.
They don't heal overnight. And although some places don't like to talk about all of the issues that do exist with them in sanctuary, it doesn't fix everything. And it still is captivity. We have fences. They can't just go where they want and do what they want. And if they want to walk for 6 hours and go, they can't. So there are things from their past that they still have to deal with. But sanctuary is not perfect. We have our limitations as well. So, yeah.
Sanctuary is not perfect, but what it does offer, that space to go through that healing process.
Sure.
And whatever that may be. And it's something that we've talked about forever, is honoring that process for them. And if Pocha needs to have somebody she vents towards for a little while, or if she needs Mateus to step away for a little while, so be it.
I mean, you were it for Lady.
Yeah.
You were definitely Lady's punching bag when she first arrived. She was perfect princess with me. She never did anything wrong when I was with her. And Scott was a different story. But...
And part of that's our learning, and part of it's where they're at, and part of it's their comfort with each individual.
Sure.
And our job is to honor that space, what it is needed, and sometimes laugh about it.
Sometimes cry yourself to sleep over it.
Sometimes personally, internally frustrated of what have I done to upset this little lady. But it's part of what's so intriguing about what we do, and what it is that each elephant will need, and adapting to the evolution that they go through as well, because what they need now is not what they're going to need in 6 weeks, or necessarily who they're going to need in 6 weeks. Maybe it will need that open up, to a Pocha Mateus relationship later on, looking at Maya and all her evolution. Guille was it. Guille was everything to her, and then nobody was, and then all of a sudden it's Maya and Bambi. And again, maybe living her best life now that she has Bambi and looking after Bambi. And, so it's just, part of that journey that we all go through life, but add the element of extreme trauma, and it becomes all the more complex.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, all your insights. Very, very fascinating, interesting episode again. So I will let you go for your busy afternoon, and the little bird party in the background, still very sweet. So yes, thanks for your time.
Oh, it's sweet until he's been doing it for like 7 days straight, and he just keeps doing it. And his mother has left now. I am getting ready to leave the house as well. He can just own the house.
I came back yesterday and it's like, Mom. I'm like, holy cow. She's like, this has been going on for hours now. Oh.
Yeah.
go out to
and
the
it
bug
is a wild bird,
supermarket.
so everybody know this is a wild bird hanging out on the
Yeah.
veranda because we live in the middle of the forest. So they're
Open
all over the
space. We
place.
are not keeping it anywhere. It just chooses to sit there and beg on our porch.
Yeah, or maybe you can send a photo, and I'll ask Bob to put it into the video for us. So, okay, I'll let you go, and then we'll catch up again for our next recording, which is actually, in fact, the last recording then for this year. And we said last time, where's the year gone? And talking about where the year went, or where the year has gone, don't forget that you can support Global Sanctuary for Elephants by purchasing your Christmas gifts on their wonderful online store. I see there is still a sale on, and not quite sure whether it will still be on when this podcast comes out on the 17th of December, but
No,
the shop
it'll be
is still
done.
there. And yes, you can purchase T-shirts and ornaments and become an Ellie Guardian and support your work like that. Okay, then I'll let you go. Good night from Germany and have a lovely day.
Thank you, Nadia. It's always a pleasure.
Bye, Nadia.
Thank you. Bye. As we wrap up this week's episode, a reminder that if you'd like to stay up to date with current events at the Sanctuary, you can do so by following Global Sanctuary for Elephants on their various social media channels. You'll find all the details in the show notes. Thank you so much, and until we meet up in 2 weeks' time, take care.